another episode of Push Start Podcast. My name is Andile Nopapaza, and I'm very excited to have today's guest. She is a woman that has been all around the world and doing phenomenal things. And with Push Start Podcast, it's Women's Month in South Africa, and we're celebrating women all over the world. So she's the personification of the modern day global citizen with great stories of adventure, discovery, and learning in different parts of the world. She's a photographer, and the gallery of the sights and scenes on her blog could pass as a page right out of a travel magazine, which her blog posts capture your attention with detailed stories and lessons that inspire action and assures us all that we are all on a learning path and we're all trying to figure it out. She does all of this while being a management consultant based in Mumbai, India. And if you, like me, you thought that she came full circle by coming back home, but it seems like this is only the beginning. Please help me welcome Saloni Miglani. Did I get the intro right? Hey, Saloni. Hello. Okay, let's figure out what happened there. All right. Hello, Sal. Okay, there we go. Did we
Sorry,
lose? Did did we lose you on the on the stream?
yeah, it looks like my internet cut out. Sorry.
No problem. I was scared that my one was gonna cut out as well.
I missed the second half of your exciting intro, but that's okay. That's
Yeah, but you'll definitely catch that as everyone will in the live stream as well. So let's get right into it. So, from what I understand, you grew up in Egypt and the UAE. How was that experience like for you, and what are some of the memories that you gather from that experience?
Yeah, so the UAE was my first kind of experience outside of India. I was very young. I remember a lot more of Egypt because I spent my formative years there till I was 11. And Egypt was a fantastic experience. I mean, to me, it's always been home because I didn't spend my childhood anywhere else really. Um, and my most fondest memories are really friendly locals, a really nice community. At the time, the expat community was quite large as well, so it was very welcoming, and we went to great schools, and I had a lovely, lovely time. And honestly, Egypt is still, I think, one of the most exciting places to visit. I think my only regret would be not learning Arabic because when you're younger, you learn languages so much faster as well.
Hmm.
But yeah, great experience.
So, was the experience cultured and colored by the expat population that is there, and also the dynamic Arabic culture that is there also in Egypt?
Yeah, that's the other thing. We were very much in the expat community. So I grew up in Egypt, but I grew up with a group of friends that really were from everywhere. We had CNN reporters and oil company people. So you had a diverse mix of professions, and so we were with their children, obviously. You have a diverse mix of nationalities, and I would say I pretty much grew up in a little expat bubble. But at the same time, I whatever interaction I had with locals, it was lovely. There was incredibly friendly people.
Hmm. Wow, that's really awesome, and you can definitely see that in expat communities where there is some sense of family that is there growing up in those environments. Was it the same with you as well?
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. The classes were small. We would all go to school together during the week. On the weekends, we'd all play in basketball matches together, or football or soccer matches together. Um, and that was such a fun experience. It was definitely tight knit. And once you meet people there, you'll find those people along your journey across the world. I've grown up with people in Cairo that I've reunited with in England 10, 15 years later. So it's really nice that way. It doesn't just start and end there. It's kind of friendships for life.
Wow, that's really awesome. So you had your high school years in a boarding school in England, right?
Yes, that's right. At 11, my dad decided
Hmm.
to send me to boarding school in the UK. Because, as I said, the schools in Egypt were good, but a boarding school education in the UK is an incredible privilege and blessing. And, he was able to give that to me. And, I think I was excited. I think it was really difficult at the beginning, like really difficult. I do remember wanting to come home. But I spent the ages of 11 to 18 there. So I did all my major exams there in a tiny little town in southwest England.
Yeah. And how was the experience like from that experience in Cairo to all the way in England? That shock within the first few years. Who
Yeah,
was helping
absolutely.
you get through that?
Uh, my dad has been instrumental, I mean, throughout my life. But he obviously it's difficult to send your child away at the age of 11, especially to a different continent. So he was not only brave for me, but he was brave with me as well. I struggled a lot at the beginning. I wanted to come back. It was a shock because I had gone from, like I said, a very close knit family community in Egypt and my family to a boarding school education in like I said, a very small town. And a lot of the children knew each other because their families knew each other because they all lived nearby. So I definitely struggled. Um, but I think after a year, I ended up just, sliding right in and making the most of it.
Picking up the slang, picking up the nuances of the town and everything like that. So
Yeah,
fast forward,
absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah.
So fast forward to after your years in boarding school, you went into uni and you
Hmm.
were studying in London. So who was Sal back then in London? Were you always, because I know you're a reader and the books behind you show, were you reading inside
Mhm.
of coffee shops or were you reading inside of the library? What is Sal back in uni like?
Yeah, that's such a good question because reading is something that your habit of reading changes so much as you go through life. Just before we had this discussion, we were saying how because of university you were not able to read as much, and I definitely reading took a back seat for me at university. I was a very avid reader until 18, and then went to university, got because I studied Spanish, we got a lot of set text to read in Spanish. And so, I was reading for work or for studies. And at the end of the day, I would just end up, watching a TV show or going out with friends. But, if it was downtime on my own, I'd be watching TV. And I think between the ages of 18 to 22, I averaged maybe one book a year. Uh, so my reading life
London
took
was
a
so
real big dip. I just focused on my studies, really.
and London life was also fun, huh?
Yeah, that's the other thing, I think. But even no matter how busy your life is, you'll have that time every day to yourself, and how you use it, I think it changes as you evolve.
Yeah. So did your reading habits, because you also track, I pick up that you also track the amount of books that you read per year. Did your
Mm.
reading habits also translate into your studies, your work ethic when it comes to your studies? Were you someone that was really dedicated in their studies?
Yeah, absolutely. I've always been very dedicated to things that matter a lot to me. So, it was again, it was a great privilege to be able to go to university in the UK. Um, and my father worked very hard for me to get that opportunity. So it was definitely something I didn't take lightly. Studied a lot, had a lot of fun as well. But yeah, when it comes to studies, it's down to the wire with that, and yeah, books took a back seat, unfortunately.
Yeah. But as it seems, you learned Spanish, of course, and you also had like varied experiences and you picked up different types of skills as well. What drove you to take up all those different types of skills that you had outside of uni and exploring that?
Yeah, so when it came to Spanish, I really enjoyed it at school. And studying a language at a university involves not just the language, but as I said, the literature and the culture. And so, yeah, I really wanted to do a deep dive into that and learn more. I was more interested in Latin American culture. So I focused more on Latin American literature, particularly. Even though I'm such a reader and not a TV watcher, I particularly enjoyed analyzing Latin American film. Um, so that was one avenue that opened up when I started university. And yeah, and towards the end of my degree, I picked up skateboarding, which was completely unexpected. I'd never considered skateboarding before. And it's not like the tricks and the ollies and things, it's just, getting from A to B, but in a fun way.
Yeah. So who inspired that explorer personality in you to even try skateboarding towards end of uni?
I think when it comes to trying new things, I'm always up for it. I'm always up for trying something that will challenge me. And a friend of mine had just got a penny board and was trying it out. We were in the Olympic Park in London actually, and trying it out. And I thought, okay, I'll just get on it for a minute and see. And absolutely loved it. I loved the feeling of freedom and kind of just the kind of risk of maybe falling off, maybe not, but learning to keep your balance. I think when it comes to trying new things, I've tried many things that I haven't liked, but I think if you don't try, then you may not discover the thing that you enjoy the most.
That's definitely true. That in essence is the youthful spirits, the spirits of trying and tasting a lot of different things, finding out what works for you. So during that time, you also went to study in Mexico abroad, doing international business studies. So with that as well, you, I know you have photos from there which are exceptional, are really beautiful on your site. Did you pick up
Thank you.
photography right then when you went to Mexico, or was it something that you were toying with way before then?
I think, photography is something I've always done in some shape or form since maybe the age of 11. My father is, well, he was more into photography than he is now, but he got me my first point and shoot camera. No iPhones or anything back then, and I really enjoyed just documenting school experience. All the antics we got up to, or our sunny days in the park. And then it kind of evolved from there. And I guess you're right. In Mexico, it's when I truly discovered my passion for photography. I was gifted an SLR camera for my 18th birthday, and I went to Mexico a couple years after. And yeah, Mexico is such a stunning country. I think a lot of good photography also depends on the subject, and it was just somewhere that I wanted to capture in some shape or form.
That's really awesome because all the pictures there really show the variety of the landscapes in Mexico, the culture, the colorfulness of the whole country. So with that, how do you, because a friend of mine, a friend of yours mentioned in a comment that one of the superpowers that you possess is your
Oh
ability to
yeah.
adapt to new cultures, right? So how did you translate from London, which is much more lively, upbeat, to Mexico, which is a whole different ball game? What are the strategies that allow you to adapt to a new environment?
That's a great question. The funny thing is, when it came to choosing a place to go for our year abroad, the majority, I would say 98% of our year group chose to go to Spain. It was closer to England, a lot more accessible, easy to come home, and it was perceived as safer than Mexico. Um, and so I don't know. I did actually initially my choice was to go to Spain, but there was just something in me that thought, this Mexico opportunity sounds amazing. It sounds a little risky in terms of it being challenging. But I thought, how many times are you going to be offered the chance to go live in Mexico? It's not easy to get a job there. I mean, as a foreigner, it's a complicated process to go to university there alone. And my university had an agreement with them. So I decided, let's just try it. Let's go and see what it's like. If I don't like it, I can always come back. And I think what really helped, first of all, is not even a strategy of mine. It's just the absolute friendliness and openness of Mexicans. After living in so many different places, I've always come back to Mexico as the place where people are the most open out of the places I've been, the most friendly, the most welcoming. Um, so that really helped me from day one without me even, trying anything to assimilate. I think something that I picked up from living across the world has been the idea of just being open-minded. If something was happening the next week at the university in Mexico, for example, a special Cinco de Mayo celebration or whatever it was, I made sure to go, even if I wasn't interested, or even if it was something I wouldn't normally do. And I think it was just jumping out of my comfort zone and trying something new. Yeah.
Oh, that's really great. And the fact that you were fully immersed in the culture is really something to marvel at. Because when we go out and travel to new places, we still want to take our old experiences. We want to take our old
Yeah.
experiences from the old place into that to that space as well. What are some of the things that you have learned through cultural immersion that people generally overlook when they go traveling?
Another great question. I think when it comes to traveling abroad, again, I do think a lot of it is closed-mindedness. A lot of people expect things to go how they expect them to go, how they're used to them going in their home country. And I've definitely been a victim of this in the past year. I mean, after living in a lot of places, I still struggle with it. As I was saying to you before this chat, before I came to India, I was very used to things going to plan, people showing up at 4 if they were going to show up at 4, and generally just things running smoothly. I mean, my definition of smoothly. And I came to India, and it was a complete shock. Things weren't going as I expected. Even small things like grocery shop items that I was used to having in stock were nowhere near available or were extortionately priced. So it was a lot about kind of accepting in order to adapt. I used to always tell my dad when I first moved here that, oh, it's not working as per plan. And my dad said, define plan. Maybe that's their definition of plan. You're here now, so you have to try that.
Wow, that's really awesome. And with your experiences back from Mexico as well, you also had to adapt to a new change, and that is having your studies cut short because of finances. How was that like for you and your family, such that it was a very important moment? I also had an experience that was similar to this, but I want to find out from you, how was that like for you?
Yes, that was really difficult. I came back from Mexico, obviously on a high from one of the best years of my life. And I came back reunited with my university classmates. And we were all ready to finish our final year together and graduate together. And you know how it is, you're in a cohort, you all know each other. And then suddenly, a few months in, actually, to the academic year, 1 or 2 months, I found out that financially I wouldn't be able to complete the year. As you know, international fees across the world, but especially in the UK, are really high. And due to some financial issues, I couldn't. And at the beginning, I took it really badly. For a whole year, actually, I kind of, felt sorry for myself, moped around, didn't really do anything as well. I desperately tried to stay in the UK, to cling on to what I know, the concept of what felt right. And so I worked as a waitress, trying to save up money. So at the beginning, it was definitely difficult. And then this went on for 2 more years, and it got a lot better over the years as I started to accept the situation rather than fight it.
So that was your inflection point when you started accepting the reality of what was the situation at the time.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a turning point. I realized, I looked back after 9 months when I finally came home from the UK. I look back and I thought, what have I been doing? I've just been feeling sorry for myself and haven't got anything to show for the past few months that I've been out of uni. Um, I didn't really achieve anything. I was just, desperately trying to go back. So yeah, so my friends graduated, and then that was the moment I thought, okay, let's just make the most of this. Uh, First thing I did to make the most of it was move to China. So that was definitely an experience in itself. I very very randomly, I decided to look at jobs in Beijing, and the best jobs, in terms of experience, in terms of what was available for foreigners, was English teaching. So
Hmm.
I accepted an English teaching job and moved to Beijing. And already in those 6 months, I learned and did so much more than I did in that whole year of, not accepting the change that had come about.
Oh, that's really awesome. And you we can pick up from that you are very goal directed. You look at the goals that you want to achieve, and then the new site now was moving on to China, which is another different experience altogether. And you're teaching elementary students English, so that's another learning curve as well. And
Yeah,
you then took another pivot and went to Malaysia, where you worked at a startup.
correct.
What inspired that move?
Yeah, so that was a more of a less of a jumping out of my comfort zone move, because at the time my father and brother were living in the south of Malaysia, uh, and I came home, and I still had a few months to kill, and I thought, okay, now what's the next adventure? And at the time, I was really into stationery and ephemera and journaling, and the power of social media. I was on Instagram and found a job opening in a startup that specialized in personalized stationery. And it was just the two founders at the time. They're 15 people now, but it was just the two of them. And, they'd wanted their first external intern or employee. And I signed up, and at the time I did have the website. I had just the photographs, so they had a look at that and they thought, okay, this sounds like someone who would, like, have fun trying a new experience. And yeah, I moved to KL and lived there for 4 or 5 months, and that was, yeah, a world apart from what I was doing in China, but again, a huge learning experience.
As I would imagine, because number one, Malaysia is a very dynamic country. Number two, you are also in a startup, so a lot of the thing is spinning a lot of plates and learning as you go. Would you say that also shaped what you do currently now with your blogging and your writing? That it's just learning as you go.
Absolutely, that's such a good way of putting it, because before joining the startup, I've always had perfectionist tendencies, and I've always thought I have to learn everything I can about how to do this thing, and then only I can do this thing. But that delays progress, that delays learning. It actually hampers learning. But in the startup, everything was so fast paced. I remember in my first week, the founders asked me, we need 4 articles written up about our new products. We'll need it next week. And this was actually my first corporate job. Not corporate, but business job that didn't involve teaching children. And and it was such a shock, because I was like, oh, I can't even write one article in a week. It takes a long time to edit and research and make perfect before anyone can see it. And obviously I delivered the 4 articles as they asked, and they weren't so bad. And then I realized, okay, so the trick to this is just to get going, keep going, and then correct course as you go along.
Yeah, that's definitely true. That's what I like about working with companies that are in the startup phase as well. It teaches you to fail quick, fail fast, and always be on constant improvement, as opposed to maybe having a traditional job. I think there's a lot of value though in the early jobs that you held as a waitress. That teaches you a whole lot of
Yeah.
humility. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. It's first of all, it's physically exerting, exhausting, and that's just one part. But I think waitressing taught me lot about just how to interact with people you don't know. I mean, I've had that in a friendship setting, in a business setting, but if you're serving clients at a dinner party and James Franco's in the next room, how do you compose yourself? How do you stay professional and not snap a photo and
Did that actually happen? James Franco was in the next room.
yeah, yeah, he was
How
bald at the time, I think, for a role. So we didn't recognize him at first. But we had to stay professional and keep our cool and just
I would have
offer
lost
him.
my mind.
It
I would have
was
lost my
definitely
mind. Yeah, that's a really great experience. So,
yeah.
with the blog post, I know that you took quite a lot of time establishing it. I know you put the photos first, but actually writing work, it was a process of 7 years, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, I've been
Yeah,
Yeah, I've been writing for a long time, but just for myself, as a way of organizing my thoughts. I don't know why I enjoy writing them. It's the best way for me. And at that time in Mexico, around 7 years ago, I wanted to start the blog, but again, I was just scared of it not being perfect and not being right. Even though I had really cool experiences to share and advice to give for people who wanted to go there, but I was too scared. And then, finally this year, I bit the bullet and went for it.
yeah. Do you think that that has to do with the accumulation of experiences that you've had across the years, and also what we're experiencing now with the lockdown? We are much more slow. We wake up, we just sit at our desks, we have nowhere
Yeah.
to rush to, no dinner
Yeah.
parties, as you mentioned in your post.
Yeah.
Do you think that played a role in that?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I came to my father's here 6 months ago, and I just slowed down. In my day job, it's usually fast paced. It's usually long, 12-hour days, and it still is that at times. But you cut out commuting time. You cut out a lot of dead time that you lose here and there. And those spaces of time didn't give me more time to write, but they gave me more time to think. And then that thinking led to the creation of this blog. I watched a lot of inspiring YouTubers, and my dad's been asking me for like 7 years, when's the blog coming or how's the website going? And I thought, if I'm not going to do it now, when I have no excuses, like I can't leave my house, then when will I do it? So definitely the lockdown has pushed it.
Oh, that's awesome. So your dad actually reads your blog posts.
Oh, every time. He usually reads them before I even publish them. He's my grammar checker and
Ah,
just
nice.
idea approver. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
really awesome. With also tying into that, with the current moment that we're facing right now, a lot of people are having layoffs, a lot of people having
Mhm.
opportunities cancelled.
Mhm.
There's a lot of uncertainty when it comes to international travel. We also spoke about this off air. But do you think that in rushing through all of these things, we can fall into the trap of losing those moments that enabled you to start the blog,
Yeah, I
those
think that's an
quiet
excellent
moments?
question. So you're saying, we get busy in one thing after another, and we lose those little moments, right? I think it's a lesson to be learned. I think now that we've had this experience, I think we should think a lot about the dead time in our lives. The time we spend commuting, maybe mindlessly scrolling on social media. Maybe we want to spend that time learning a new skill on our phone or, reading a book. or anything that brings you joy or teaches you something. I think that's one thing this lockdown has taught us. And when it comes to layoffs and and job losses, finding a new job and things, I think in a way this lockdown gifts a lot of people the time to dedicate to their job search, to upskilling, to slowing down, spending time with family, because a lot of people get so caught up in their jobs that family takes a backseat.
Yeah, that's definitely true.
Mm,
And I saw you had awesome travels with your dad all over India during this whole time. How has
yeah,
that been for your writing process? How important is that? I know we cooped up inside of our homes now, and sometimes it just feels much more harder to create. So all of those small experiences, traveling across India, do they help you with your creative process?
I think so. The interesting thing is those trips, or any of my travel in India was done before the lockdown, before I really had a creative process, before I started really writing. So a lot of my writing has been quite introspective because I don't have anything to go off. We're in the four walls of our home. We're having the conversations with our family and our friends, and that's all it's limited to. But I do find travel inspiring in general. I think the most inspiring thing for me is meeting new people. I think it's something that's invaluable. And I definitely think that my preference for a place to live always depends on the people. And like I said, I loved Mexico because the people were so welcoming and friendly. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's really awesome. So I want to get into the details of your creative process when you're writing.
Mm,
I know it's a messy process. I've learned this while writing scripts for the podcast. Sometimes
yeah.
it's messy, sometimes it does make sense. There's method behind the madness. How do you navigate creation?
Oof, it's so difficult. I think it gets more difficult the more you do it because, as I was saying, the work gets better with every time you publish. So I feel like, when I published my first blog post, I was fine about it. The stakes were low. They're still quite low, but the stakes were really low because no one knew it existed. So I just wrote it and I published and I was fine. But increasingly as my audience grows, it's still tiny, but as it grows, the stakes get higher. And so when I'm thinking about something to write, I will kind of just tell myself, this is just a rough draft. This is just, if you look at the back end of my website, there's hundreds of drafts of ideas I have, and that's where all the magic is. And I just need to find a way to package it and present it. So usually I'll come up with the idea when I'm like on a walk or talking to someone, and then I'll come and give a really like stream of consciousness draft on the website. Really, no editing, no self editing, just write everything that comes to mind. Then leave it for a day, and then this is the really hard part, the editing. Something I still struggle with because you think, oh, this is the final product, so this is the moment. So then come back and edit, and sometimes it's easy, especially if it's a topic that's from the heart. It just flows. But for example, this week I've been writing a post that'll come out next week, which is book related, and it's a recommendation list, and that's a lot more difficult because trying to encapsulate how I feel about a certain book in a short space is very difficult. So yeah, it's I guess it's really fast and rough, and then it gets polished as we go.
But then with the editing side, I've experienced this with podcasts, especially the short format, and I could only imagine what it's like with actual words. How do you how do you break away from that perfectionist trap to keep on editing
That's such a good
and
point.
not actually?
I think Yeah, I think when I'm writing the rough draft, I always tell myself, don't self edit. Don't self edit, just throw it out there. And then when it comes to editing, I think it's definitely a skill, which I've not refined at all yet. But I think, if there's a sentence I'm struggling with, I'll just leave it. I'll keep going and I'll edit the rest. And at the end of my writing session, I'll write at the top of the page, kind of a note to self. These are the sentences I'm struggling with. When I open this tomorrow, these are the sentences I'm going to tackle. And 100 times out of 100, the next day, I'm ready to go with those sentences, and they get done in a minute. Um, my brother's a big gamer, and he always talks about rage quitting a game. If the game is, I don't know anything about gaming, but if he's struggling with a particular challenge, he's just like, okay, I'm going to rage quit and start tomorrow. And so I started doing that. I don't rage quit, but I just leave it, and it helps.
Yeah, your brother is definitely right about rage quitting. There were some games that I played way back that would absolutely upset me, and the next day I'll be like, "Oh, wow, that's simple." So and
Yeah,
exactly just move on. Yeah, and that's the same thing with the creative process. And you mentioned as well in your blog post, you draw a parallel between uh, someone like Picasso and someone like PewDiePie, where they're
yeah.
early where their early iterations of work were nothing like what we know them for now. How do you make
Mm.
peace with that now, knowing that it's a continuous improvement process when it comes to creating? And when you look back, probably 15 years from now, you'll be like, "Oh, did I really write
Yeah,
that?" Yeah,
exactly. And that's also something that ties in with the editing part. When I'm like beating myself up about editing something perfectly, I just think, in a year, I'm going to have fresh work and this is not going to matter that much. The point is to just keep going. And exactly like PewDiePie, if he was too scared to start, I'm sure his initial videos were really, amateur, but we're all amateurs, right? Like if he hadn't started, he wouldn't be where he was today. And it's not to say that having millions of subscribers equals success, but I think it just goes to show that, if you consistently plug away at something and just believe in it, and it's something that brings you joy, then why not do it?
and you do mention this in your post with regards to focusing on the right type of stuff.
Hmm.
Oftentimes when we create, especially now since it's instant feedback, we focus on the likes, we focus on the shares, we focus on all of that. How do you keep yourself grounded and remind yourself that it's not about the likes, it's actually about the creative process?
Exactly. I think, I spent, before I started this blog in March, I spent the last almost 2 years off Instagram, Facebook, didn't have any social media. You know what that's like because we met on LinkedIn, and LinkedIn was the only
Yeah.
thing I had. And I was still creative. I wasn't sharing it with the world, but it was still bringing me joy. And now I'm still enjoying it, and I'm sharing it with the world. And I think that adjustment is what I found really difficult at the beginning. I thought likes equals content is good. No likes equals, not great content. Do better next time. But I've mentioned briefly how quality of engagement with my work has been so much more important than quantity. If a blog post gets 100 likes, which is a pipe dream, but if a blog post gets 100 likes, what if all of those likes are from people who want you to check out their business and they're not genuinely interested in what you have to say? But if it has 2 or 3 likes, which is what I'm averaging, but beautiful, heartfelt comments, people who actually, found that the words resonated with them, it's actually so much more meaningful. Even when someone subscribes to my newsletter, it just makes my day. And I think those moments of joy are not found in quantity. And of course, social media is fantastic for sharing our work. There's no doubt about it, but I don't think it's the be all and end all.
I would think it is quite two pronged when it comes to social media. It's good for distribution, but for maybe a deep work type of approach when it comes to your work, it's much more tricky to navigate. There is a way to navigate it, but it takes time and it requires a lot of humility to say, I'm just learning and I'm just trying it out, and I need to focus on the right type of metrics. And you
Hmm.
mentioned the quality engagement. Quality engagement is something that I also resonate with. If it's just two people liking the posts, but there's good comments there, and it's people that I've formed relationships with, then it's absolutely amazing. Which is why I
Yeah.
haven't commented on the latest post that you have, because I'm finding it difficult to go there and actually share the learnings that I've
Yeah.
had from that post. It's something
Yeah.
that takes time. It's not as instant as social media wants
Exactly.
us to do. Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly.
So, with the practical things that you've learned from blogging and the work that you do now as a management consultant, how is that translated? Do you see some transfer?
Uh, though I honestly I feel like my work and my blogging are just worlds apart. I'm sure there are transferable skills between the two, but I just haven't, for some reason, I don't want to merge the two worlds right now. Um, but yeah, I mean, consulting teaches you a lot about doing many different things, um, and learning lots of different things. For example, we work across industries. So I've definitely learned about, trying out different techniques with different people in different markets. And I'm sure that's somehow influenced my creative process, but I haven't formally linked the two in my life.
Oh, that's really great. And what would you say that is the one thing people get wrong about creating, whether it's photography, creating blog posts, or what is that people get wrong about these things?
You mean the creators or the consumers of the creation?
The creatives, people that want to get into the creative space.
The one thing I think is just, honestly, it is the fact that you have to be perfect in order to start. I think that's the worst. I know I've said it many times already, but I think it's the worst kind of barrier to starting. Even if you don't share it with anyone, just start creating and see what happens. You could surprise yourself. I mean, I feel like a lot of people who are not creators or maybe want to be, they think, I'm not an artist, I can't draw. And, it's a skill I can't learn. I mean, but have you tried? And I think that's something that's worth mentioning.
Yeah, a good friend of mine who shared the link to this post on LinkedIn, Nikhil, shared an awesome
Mm.
video about the creative process. It really encapsulates how messy it is, how iterative it is, and you just laugh at yourself sometimes. I shouldn't have said that thing. I shouldn't have written that thing, and
Yeah.
it it, it's what really makes it fun throughout the whole
Mm.
creative process. To understand that you are not perfect, you'll never be perfect. It's an ongoing process.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, so we are about to come to the close of the show.
Oh
I wanted
wow,
to
that's
ask you,
goodbye.
it flew by, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you this question. So it's a question that we're adding onto the show. We want to find out from you, what are you excited to push start on in the near future?
Oh wow, that's a great question. Um, I'm excited to push start on a new strategy for my blog. And that's not a social media strategy. It's not a growth strategy. It's a creative goal, I would say. I want to push the limits of my writing comfort zone, write about things that I haven't written about, things I want to write about, but I'm not sure how. So yeah.
Yeah, we're looking forward to that. And I'm a new subscriber to your blog, and I encourage everyone to subscribe. All the places where you can find Saloni are on the YouTube description. But also, as well, just as a reminder, where can we find you, except for the blog as well?
So yeah, I'm on Instagram, saloni.miglani. I'm on Twitter, Saloni Mig is my username. And yeah, you can find me at salonimiglani.com.
And also on LinkedIn.
Oh yeah, LinkedIn, that's where we met. Well, yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
if you just search for Saloni Miglani on LinkedIn, then you'll find me there. Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you so much, Sal. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the show. It was a very informative conversation. I would say that I learned a lot from you, and I hope that the watchers and listeners of this podcast also learned a lot from you as well. I would like to extend my deepest gratitude for you coming onto the show. And you are truly a Wonder Woman, as we are celebrating Wonder Woman this Woman's Month.
Thank you so much, Andile, for inviting me and for having me. And great job on push starting this podcast. If you haven't already, please listen to Andile's show. It's great. Thank
Oh,
you.
awesome plug. Thank you. All right, cheers.